Hello, dear viewers. This is Jason, your favorite storyteller, and I'm back to bring you the second part of today's story. I hope you're somewhere cozy because we're diving right in. I was able to leave for work and avoided Glenda the next morning. It was mid-morning when the piece of sheep named Bob stormed into my office. "I'm not leaving here, Hank, until you talk to me. What you're doing to that wonderful woman is unforgivable. I'm going to talk to you as long as it takes to get you to change your mind." I picked up the phone and called my boss. "Hi Dennis. I have a problem I hope you can help me with. Bob is in my office right now wanting to take up my time with matters not involving work. He's interfering with my ability to do my job. Is there someone you can call or something you can do to stop him from harassing me? I want nothing to do with him. Thanks, Dennis, I appreciate it." "Are you serious? You're not man enough to talk to me man to man, so you call in the cavalry." "Something like that," I flatly stated as my office phone rang. "Yes sir, I'll put him on." "It's for you," I glibly stated as I handed Bob the phone. "Hello. Yes, sir. That's right, but I understand, sir. It won't happen again." Defeated, he handed me the receiver. "This isn't over, Hank. I won't put my job in jeopardy by approaching you here at work anymore. But this isn't over by a long shot. We have too much history for things to end this way." I kept looking at the papers on my desk, wordlessly ignoring his rant until he turned and walked out the door. I was glad it happened. He would be on a short leash now. He knew I'd report any further incidents of harassment at work, and he needed this job as much as I did. I took solace in that. If he contacts me outside of work, I'll deal with it at the time. Time is on my side. According to the doctors, Glenda has less than 2 good months left before she starts her downward spiral. Although it will be difficult, I can manage 2 months of hell if I have to. I showed up that evening after work after having visited a family restaurant. One reason was to limit my exposure to Glenda by not allowing her to cook for me. Another reason is that she'll be out of the picture altogether in a few months, and I'll have to fend for myself at mealtimes anyway. I might as well scope out decent places to catch a meal at fair prices, which is difficult to do in this economy. As expected, she'd cook for us. "Hi, honey. I fix your favorite. I hope you're hungry. I noticed you're a bit late coming home from work, but I kept it warm for us. Sit down and I'll fix you a plate," she said sweetly. "I'm sorry, but I've already eaten. That's why I'm late. As you said, you won't be around much longer, so I am familiarizing myself with dining venues around town to prepare me for after you're gone. I apologize. I don't mean for you to waste your time, energy, and food on me. I should have told you that I'll be eating all meals out from now on. That should lighten your burden some, not having to look after me anymore." "You asshole. You're going to take that away from me too? You've made it clear that I'm off limits as far as sex goes, but I was hoping you'd be reasonable and let me continue to cook for you. Am I nothing to you now? Is it?" "I can't say the words you want to hear, Glenda. You say you're sorry you ducked another man. I'm sorry there are consequences for your actions. Neither of us is happy with the circumstances, but they are what they are. I'm going up to my room now." She began crying again. "Hank, you don't need to hide up in your room all the time. Can't you at least watch TV down here or something? I don't have the plague and I can't infect you with my cancer. Please don't shut me out completely." I stopped in my tracks. "I'll consider it under 2 conditions," I offered. "Name them," she responded. "Number 1, no mention whatsoever of that weekend or what it has cost us. I don't want to be besieged by attempts to make me listen to your idea of reason. And the other, don't ever mention that piece of sheep or his slut wife to me ever again. If you decide to go out with them at some point, don't ever tell me about it, neither beforehand nor afterward. Agreed?" She looked sad that I was taking such a hard stance against the 2 people she loved nearly as much as me. Agreed. To her credit, she never asked for the remote. Whatever I wanted to watch was what we watched. Perhaps she felt that she was at least giving me the tiniest bit that I would allow her to do. Our conversation was limited to work, politics, family, or mundane home issues. She honored her word about not bringing up contentious topics, though I knew they were boiling just beneath the surface. If she ever talked to my ex-friends on the phone, she did it out of earshot. She knew them to be one of my most sensitive triggers, and we at least had a détente of sorts. Late at night, every night, I could hear her crying herself to sleep alone in her bedroom. To be honest, I don't believe that she regretted her time with him. Her only regret, nympho, is enduring the consequences and aftermath. Then she pulled a fast one on me. Saturday morning, she asked if she could go with me out to eat breakfast and lunch, since I was no longer allowing her to prepare my meals. I stunted that by fixing myself a bowl of milk and cereal for breakfast before retreating outdoors to mow and trim the yard. I was thoughtful enough to wash and dry my dishes afterward. Outdoor work was usually my domain, so I kept it up. I called a local pizza place that also serves subs, and had them deliver my sub sandwich to the house for lunch, so I could keep working on vehicle maintenance. She was washing clothes and asked me to toss my dirty clothes in with hers, so she could wash them all. I politely declined, stating that I didn't have much and would take care of it myself. She teared up once again and sadly walked away. Who knew a woman would cry at the thought of her husband washing his own clothes? Of course, since my bedroom was locked, she couldn't change my sheets or make my bed either. I was glad to have such tasks to occupy my time, affording me less time to feel my own painful loss. At 3 p.m. that afternoon, I heard some commotion in the house. Our children, Alan and our daughter-in-law, Brenda, along with Elise and our son-in-law, Edward, were in the kitchen happily chatting with their mom. I went in to greet them and asked what the occasion was. This was an unexpected visit. Alan spoke for the group. "Hey Dad. It's great to see you too," he affirmed as he gave me a man hug. "We've all been staying in closer touch with Mom since her diagnosis. She says she doesn't have a ton of good days left, so we thought we'd bring over some burgers and hot dogs today, and have ourselves a good old-fashioned cookout. Don't worry, you and Mom don't need to lift a finger. We know our way around, and the four of us will take care of everything, including cleanup, if you can believe that after our childhood," he joked. Don't get me wrong, I love having the kids over. But this was no happenstance event. I'm certain that Glenda was behind this purported altruistic occasion. What's the saying? All's fair in love and war. We weren't exactly at war, but close enough to warrant her using the kids against me, I surmise. After an hour, I'd been advised that the grill had been meticulously cleaned and was ready for use. The girls had the salad makings cut up and mixed. The meat was in the refrigerator and everything seemed ready to go. Then Glenda came to me. "Hank, honey. The kids have requested homemade ice cream. As you know, the recipe I use is cooked, and I don't have all the ingredients. I'm just going to pop over to the supermarket and pick up the missing items. I'll be back in a jiffy," she happily chirped. As soon as her car left the garage, I felt as if I was surrounded by 4 interrogators from the Spanish Inquisition. This time, my daughter, Elise, took the lead. "Daddy, is it okay if we talk with you for a few minutes?" she asked ever so politely. "Of course, sweetheart. My door is always open to all of you." She smiled sweetly, then began. "Daddy, as you know, Mom and I talk quite often. She's more likely to share girl talk with me than she might be with Alan. First and foremost, the 4 of us want to make sure that you know that we all love you. We love Mom too, and that's why we want to speak to you to get your side of things. Everyone in this room wants what's best for Mom until she passes. You know better than we do that she doesn't have a lot of time left, so we want her to be able to make the best of what time she has left. Daddy, we know what Mom did with Uncle Bob that weekend. She confessed it to me while you were gone for those couple of days. Like you, we were surprised at first, but after having some time to reflect on it, we've come to better understand and appreciate her position. We get why it was hard for you to deal with at first, but you've had some time to make your peace with it. She swears that it will never be repeated, and we believe her. This was just a bucket list item for her that she wanted to experience before she died. Is that so hard to understand and forgive? She says that you haven't touched her since that weekend. She also says you've cut Uncle Bob and Aunt Teresa out of your life as well. Dad, they've always been your best friends, forever. Can't you see that all Uncle Bob was doing was granting the wish of a dying woman? You could have had Aunt Teresa that weekend in return. But you just blew up like a stick of dynamite. So you 4 believe that I should simply forgive and forget, huh? Is that right?" All 4 of them nodded. I took inventory of my sad thoughts as I stood before the only ones left in the world that I loved more than my own life. I had to be careful. I did not want to get argumentative and alienate the 4 of them. Then an idea was fostered in the back of my mind. "Alan, you're my flesh and blood. You know that I'd die for you without hesitation, right?" "Sure, Dad. You've always been there for me. There's no question about that." "And, Brenda, as my son's wife, you know that I love you as well, don't you, and that I would die for you too if need be without even blinking?" I asked her. "Of course, Dad. And that love goes both ways. All 4 of us love you just as much. Each one of us would willingly sacrifice our lives to save yours or Mom's. That's why we're here, because we all love both of you so much," she assured. "I'm so glad to hear you say that, Brenda. I believe you. That's why it makes it much easier to ask this next question of the 2 of you. As you know, I'm not getting any younger. And as a result of your mother's actions, I have thought a lot about bucket lists, even one of my own. So, Alan, would you be willing to give Brenda to me for a weekend to fulfill a bucket list item of mine? I believe that if she and I spent a weekend together as your mother and Bob did, then that would convince me that you 2 believe what you're saying to me, and are willing to back up your words with action. If you do that, then perhaps I could see my way clear to forgive your mother." "What? Are you crazy?" Alan exclaimed. Brenda blushed a bright red at the idea of the intimate invitation. There's no way in hell I'd ever agree to that, Dad, not even if you were dying. I realize that my wife is not your bloodkin, but that would still be incest in my book. I can't believe that you'd even suggest such a thing. He raved. Oh, you mean like Uncle Bob and your mom? That kind of thing. I posed. What had been said percolated through 4 minds at once. I let it simmer for a moment before speaking again. Brenda, I owe you and my son an apology. I would never ask such a thing of you, not even if I was dying. I asked it just now to make a point. Alan, you said you wouldn't agree to it even if I was dying. Neither did I. It is easier for the 4 of you to forgive your mom because you aren't married to her. But think of this, Alan, if Brenda had gone with me and returned to you, would you ever look at her the same again? Could you so easily forgive her as you're asking of me to forgive your mother? There was total silence in the room for over a minute as the 2 couples considered the rationality of my logic. Without a word, Alan nodded his head at Edward and they shook hands. Then Elise hugged Brenda. I was unsure what was happening, but I hoped against hope it wouldn't be another attack. Alan again addressed me. Dad, you're right. Thanks for still being a good father and teaching the 4 of us another important life lesson. We were only seeing this from Mom's perspective. We hadn't considered it from all angles, and you just opened our eyes. Thank you. That being said, we don't love Mom any less, and we still want her to be happy to her dying day. Yet we realize that she gave up the right to ask that of you when she did what she did. We also understand how you feel about Uncle Bob and Aunt Teresa, and quite frankly, we agree with your feelings wholeheartedly, at least about Uncle Bob. We're not taking sides on this, Dad. We're being neutral. We love you both equally, but we won't press you about Mom again. You have our word on that. And Mom will just have to accept that she can't have everything she wants. We'll still be there for her in every way we can, but we won't support her quest to force you to forgive her by using us as her pawns. I swear, if I was wearing a shirt with buttons, every one of them would pop off right now because of how proud I am of all 4 of you. I couldn't ask for anything more. Thank you for your understanding. I never advocated any of you turning your back on your mother for an instant. She's going to lean heavily on you guys when it gets toward the end, and I know you'll be there for her when she needs you the most. I hugged all 4 of them in turn. I was so relieved at how things turned out. It could have gone a lot worse. The rest of the evening went splendidly. Glenda seemed euphoric at my positive attitude upon her return from the store. The kids cooked the burgers and hot dogs to perfection, and the soft-serve strawberry ice cream for dessert was delicious. There was no time for her to have a conversation with them as I was always around. After the cleanup, hugs, and kisses, Glenda zoned in on having a post-visit conversation with me. You seem to be in a good mood, Hank. It is wonderful to see you smile as much as you have this afternoon and evening. The kids always cheer me up every time they visit. How could I not smile with them around? A little birdie told me they were going to have a conversation with you while I was at the store. Well, the kids certainly didn't seem to be angry with you, so can I surmise that the conversation went well, and they were able to persuade you to see things my way. Your way. When they talked to me, they said they loved us both equally, and that they weren't taking sides with either of us. That seemed very fair to me. You and I did a great job raising those kids, didn't we? For some reason, my birdie led me to believe that you would either be pulled to my side of viewing things or be left out alone in the cold. I don't know anything about that, Glenda. You might want to check with your birdie again. Meanwhile, I'm going to get a shower and change. It's been a busy day for us both. I left her puzzling as I headed to take a shower. I knew she'd be in touch with Elise while I was getting cleaned up. I wonder what her attitude would be subsequent to their talk. You're just being a stubborn asshole who can't get over his fragile ego. Glenda lobbed her remark as I walked into the den. Well, I suppose it's a good thing that you learned that about me now, before wasting what's left of your life hanging around this fragile ego asshole. I touted. I'm sure that piece of sheep friend of yours will exceed all of your expectations in a man, since I'm obviously unworthy of you. She ignored my barb and continued her assault. Really? You asked Brenda to have sex with you? You might want to confirm the facts with your birdie before making things worse. I simply took advantage of a teachable moment. After the kids heard my perspective, that's when they told me they were being neutral. I have never, nor will I ever, be intimate with Brenda. I suggest you ask Brenda for confirmation since you doubt my word. She was throwing a fit because using the kids as weapons didn't go the way she had planned. I'm sure Elise filled her inaccurately on the facts about our little encounter. She was just trying to get a rise out of me. I sat down and began flipping through the channels. She stormed off to her bedroom and slammed the door. With any luck, she would remain there the rest of the night. Another week passed of our Mexican standoff. I could tell that she was becoming more frustrated every day at my recalcitrance, but we coexisted somewhat peaceably in the house. We still had no meals together. I still washed all of my own clothes and dishes whenever I made anything for myself. She went out the following Saturday night and didn't return until 11 p.m. I figured that she had visited the assholes, but she never mentioned them, nor did I inquire. I think my lack of interest pissed her off more. On the next Monday morning, the big boss, Grilla, was waiting for me in my office. He was president of the company, but he and I seldom ever crossed paths. Dennis was my immediate supervisor, and even he admitted not having access to the big boss. "Good morning, sir. To what do I owe the pleasure?" I asked as obsequiously as possible. "It's Hank, right? Hank Greenlee." "Yes, sir, at your service." "Hank, I've heard good things about you through the grapevine. Dennis speaks highly of the caliber of your work through his boss who reports to me. I try to keep my finger on the pulse of the company, and I just wanted you to know that you're a valued employee." "Why, thank you, sir. Hearing that means a lot, especially coming from the top." Yes, but I have another matter to discuss with you." "Of course, sir. Please go ahead." "Hank, do you know Brian McFadden?" "I know a Brian McFadden, sir. That's the same name as my wife's father." "Right, well, you're correct about the connection. Your father-in-law happens to be my golf partner nearly every weekend. We've known each other for years. He keeps me on my toes on the golf course. He never let on that you were his son-in-law and worked here until recently. He said he wanted you to succeed on your own merit, and you have. I respect that about both of you. However, Brian has brought something to my attention that I thought was worth talking to you about. He said that you and his daughter were going through a spat of some kind. He said also that his daughter has incurable cancer and wouldn't be long for this world. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir, it is, but," he interrupted me. "As a father, Brian only wants his daughter to be as happy as she could possibly be during these last weeks of her life. As a father yourself, I'm sure you can appreciate his sentiment. Anyway, he asked me to check in with you and see how you were doing. Sometimes men have to eat a little crow with their wives from time to time. It happens to all of us. I'm sure that you're the kind of man that takes good care of his wife. I sure would hate to hear again from Brian that you haven't stepped up to the plate with your duties at home. You realize that performance evaluations involve a person's character as much as their job skills, don't you?" I was stunned. My father-in-law was throwing me under the bus for his daughter. I guess I couldn't blame him, but neither can I abide bullying or blackmail in my workplace. I didn't want to upset my CEO any further, so I responded. "Of course, sir. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll take care of it," I offered. "See that you do, son. I don't want to have this conversation with you a second time. I assure you, sir. After today, you will not have any reason or need to follow up. Thank you for your timely advice." My boss, Grilla, left my small office very pleased with himself that he had solved his good friend's problem by taking the bull by the horns. After he was out of sight and headed to the elevator toward his office, I typed up my formal resignation on my office computer, effective immediately, and printed it out. I gathered up all of my personal belongings which easily fit in a small cardboard box, and took it to my car. Next, I swung by Human Resources, handed them my resignation, confirmed it in person, turned in my ID badge, and left my office building for the last time. Well, this tactic solved two problems, isolating me from the piece of sheep ex-friend, and eliminating my father-in-law's influence to correct my behavior toward his daughter. It created another. I was now among the ranks of the unemployed. What's more, I would be unable to utilize my former employer for reference by not working a notice. It appeared as though I would have plenty of time to plan my next steps. Since it was still early in the day, I drove home and spent the day working on projects around the house. Glenda arrived home after a day at work at her usual time. "You beat me home today. How did that happen, sweetheart?" I gave her my usual look of disdain for utilizing a term of endearment. "Well, if you must know, I quit my job today." "You what?" she exclaimed. "Yeah, it seems your dad had it in for me, so I was left with no other choice," I calmly asserted. "My dad? How on earth are you suggesting that my dad made you quit your job?" "Since you asked, I learned today that your dad regularly golfs with the CEO of my company, Grilla. As it turns out, Mr. Zakadlo was in my office first thing this morning venting to me that your dad has been complaining to him on the golf course, that he doesn't appreciate the way I've been treating you, given your tenuous situation. Mr. Zakadlo made it clear that unless I fix things at home with you to your dad's satisfaction that my future employment could be in jeopardy. He threatened me with negative performance evaluations which would affect my ability to climb the ladder there, or even be demoted. As you know, I don't take threats kindly. Even if I became your dream husband again, the damage is already done. I've been cast in a negative light by the CEO of our firm. There's no chance for me to come back from that. So I resigned my position and here I am." How dare you blame my dad for you losing your job? You're a quitter, Hank. Why don't you just admit it? You quit on me, quit on our marriage, and you quit your job. And now you want to blame my dad for your failures. He's a better man than you'll ever be, she fumed. I see. My mistake. I apologize for telling you the truth. Don't worry, I won't make that mistake again. Let me see. Since I didn't quit my job because of anything your dad said to my boss, then how about this as a reason? My big toe hurt today, so I quit. How about that? Is it a better reason in your eyes? You asshole. Why do you have to be so stubborn about everything? Why can't you forgive me and let us get on with our normal happy lives again before it's too late? Why on earth do you want to be with an unforgiving stubborn asshole like me? It makes no sense. In your eyes, that piece of sheep ex-friend is a much better man than I'll ever be. Why don't you move in with them and enjoy the remaining time you have left? He was the last one you had blissful sex with. I bet he would volunteer to ring your bell some more. Why hang around here with me if I'm such a loser? Because I love you and only you, Hank. Regardless of everything that's been said or done, you're the only man I have ever truly loved. You're just too blind to see it, she stated frustratingly. We were both trapped, she in her professed love for me, and me in my stubborn refusal to accept her infidelity. We remained at an impasse. I'm going to get something to eat. I'll be back after a while. Why don't you call your dad while I'm gone and see if he can get somebody to beat me up for you? I said, dripping with sarcasm. I thought she was out of tears. I was wrong. I left the house alone to evade more drama and have a peaceful meal out. Evidently, she did call her father while I was out and she was waiting for me to return. I'm sorry, Hank. I had no idea my father would use his friendship with your boss to try to blackmail or bully you. As much as I love my dad and appreciate what he was trying to do, messing with someone's career isn't right. His heart was in the right place. I take full responsibility because I hadn't told him the whole truth about my part in our problems. I figured as much. Look, I understand why your dad would try to use whatever influence he had at his disposal to help you. You know I'd do anything in my power to help our kids. I get that. But I thought he was a better man than that. Now I learned that he didn't have all the facts. Well, I'm going to fix that if I can, and Dad's going to help me unless he never wants to see me again, she informed. What do you mean, Glenda? How can you fix anything about my career? I've made a decision. Tomorrow morning, I'm turning in my resignation from my job. I don't need to work a notice because I won't need another job again anyway. Dad and I are going to put our heads together with yours to help you find a better job than the one you had. It's our fault that you were put in an untenable position, so it falls to us to make it right. Daddy knows a lot of people besides your boss. He'll put his networking feelers out, and so will I. We're going to do our best to find the perfect job for you and make this right. Is that okay? This is a surprise. I was expecting another attack, but this is unexpected. I have no idea what my options are, but I'm happy to accept help from you both. Thank you. I twisted Daddy's arm, and he's using up a vacation week and taking this upcoming week off work to help us. I'm either going to find you another job or die trying, she joked. True to his word, Brian was at our house bright and early the next morning. He rode with Glenda to work as she resigned from her job. She had planned on resigning within a few weeks anyway, and was relieved to miss the sorry you're dying going away party they would have held for her when she left. When they returned, our house became job central. That week, all three of us were constantly on the phone with all known business acquaintances and connections. Getting and setting up interviews was easy, but we wanted every interview I went on to be a solid qualified interview with real substance, and not just a pie-in-the-sky long shot. The economy was shrinking at the time, and well-paying job opportunities were as scarce as hen's teeth. I must have gone on a dozen interviews that week, as they kept up the pressure to assist me in finding the right fit. I'd never seen Glenda more dedicated to a task before. She had a fierce determination to honor her word to me that was unlike anything she'd ever demonstrated before. Productive assistance came from the most unlikely source. Brian swallowed his pride and contacted Greyland Cicadlo, explaining that he'd misunderstood his daughter's dilemma and jumped the gun to put pressure on me. He apologized for his part in costing Brian a valued employee, explaining that my return to my old job was not an option. Greyland lamented losing me and chewed his golf partner a new asshole for jumping to conclusions. In the next breath, he asked for an hour to make a few phone calls to see what he could do on my behalf. We were shocked to receive a call from Wellington Enterprises Incorporated 45 minutes later. They were in need of a new purchasing manager. They are a custom manufacturer that brings new inventors' products to life. Investors back the inventors' new product ideas, and Wellington brings the product to life. Creating custom manufacturing for a variety of products is no easy task, but they've carved out a niche for themselves. We were told that most of the products failed to catch on with the public, but the ones that did, made all of the other attempts worthwhile. When I interviewed with them the next day, it almost seemed as if my presence was a mere formality. The past three purchasing managers were eventually exposed for kickbacks and/or embezzlement. It seems that the two qualities they were seeking for this position were honesty and integrity. The glowing reference of Grail and Cicadlo apparently carried a lot of weight with them. My starting salary would be at a 35 premium over my previous salary under Mr. Cicadlo. He was truly a stand-up guy. I would start my new career in 3 weeks after they completed some house cleaning of infected personnel. I humbly thank Brian and Glenda for their support and help in snagging this golden opportunity. They both relayed that it was the least they could do given their complicity costing me my previous job. Brian and I were back to where we were before. We had a good relationship. He appreciated that before her weekend, I had always been a great husband to his daughter. He also asserted that many men would have abandoned their wives under similar circumstances. This would have left Glenda without the help of a partner to get through her final days. He teared up as he shook my hand firmly, relaying his regained respect for the man he knows me to be. It was as if Glenda had been tenaciously holding on to see me through securing my new job. The next day, she collapsed in pain and she became severely jaundiced. I rushed her to the hospital where they advised us that this was the normal expected progression of the cancer. Her oncologist sent her home with a barrage of meds including pain meds to mitigate her symptoms and manage her discomfort. When word got out, she had many visitors who, it seemed, wanted to pay their last visits to her while they could. I accommodated them all as best I could, and tried to arrange the scheduling of such visits in an orderly fashion, rather than have a large group all at once. One afternoon Glenda informed me that Bob and Teresa wanted to visit her, along with their children, Charlene, Joe and Evelyn. I told her that I understood and would make the arrangements. She knew what that meant. I called Elise, told her that I had some errands to take care of, which was true, and asked her if she could arrange to be with her mom and set up the requested visitation, and to text me after they had all left. She said she would take care of it and let me know when that would be. My daughter is very insightful. It worked well and I avoided the negative interaction. That visit opened Elise's eyes. From that day on, our kids began spending much more time with her, knowing that her time was getting shorter. 2 weeks later, Glenda was so weak, she could no longer get up from the bed. Insurance allowed me to hire a nurse during the day, and I took over her care in the evenings, once I returned home from my new job. She had become frail and was losing a lot of weight. She had a dedicated morphine delivery machine to help manage her pain. All she had to do was press a button, and it would dispense a measured dose to mitigate discomfort. She was no longer able to manage talking on the phone, so I turned it off and put it away. Everything now went through me. I was surprised to receive a call from Teresa to check on Glenda's condition, and to express her concern about her inability to reach her on her phone. After I explained the situation, she requested that I allow them to visit her again. I told her that I didn't think it would be convenient or a good idea. She seemed saddened by that, but didn't press me on the issue. The kids and their spouses were spending time in shifts to help me with her, and to give me breaks from constant care from time to time. That was greatly appreciated. As her condition rapidly deteriorated, I offered to put her in hospice, but she was vehemently opposed to that, fiercely stating that she wanted to die in her own home with loved ones around, and not in a room full of strangers. As much as it pained me, I granted her request. Glenda fell into a sleep from which she could not be awakened. I likened it to a coma-like state, realizing that her time was growing closer. One of the 4 kids was always around now, day and night, ready to make the call to the rest of us, should there be a significant change. I was sitting in her room late one night, getting ready to turn in for the night myself. Suddenly, Glenda sat straight up in the bed. She had been near catatonic for nearly 2 weeks, and here she was sitting up on her own. How she did it, I have no idea. She had a glow about her, and her face wore the sweetest smile I had ever seen. Then she spoke. "I'm sorry I hurt you, Hank. Please forgive me. I love you with all my heart." I immediately rushed to her side, kissed her, and said, "Of course, I forgive you, Glenda. I love you too." She gently laid back down and fell fast asleep once again. I sensed this was it and called all the children in. They held vigil with me as I held her hand. 4 hours later, she drew her last breath. All of us cried and hugged each other, clinging to the life and love we all held for one another, a love bequeathed by her. I was exhausted as I made the arrangements. Alan and Elise were a big help to me through it all. Glenda had made it easy for us by pre-planning nearly every detail that she could in advance. She was cremated and we held a memorial service at a nearby chapel. Elise nervously informed me that her mother had requested that Bob be allowed to speak at her service, after the minister had done his part. She believed it would be too much to ask of me. I was stunned and unaware that she had made such arrangements without my knowledge, but the kids begged me to let her have her wish, even after her death. I relented for their sake. At the service, there was an hour before the service began when the family met to console one another and receive visitors. I was not surprised in the least to be hugged by Charlene, Joe and Evelyn. They were our godchildren after all, and they had not done anything wrong. They had nothing to do with their parents' dealings with my wife. I hugged them back, tearing up, realizing how much I still loved them. Even though they weren't related to me by blood, they were still family. Bob and Teresa kept their distance from me but spoke to everyone else. Brian was holding up better than I thought he would. He made it clear that he didn't want any distance to come between us, and I assured him that I felt the same. During the memorial service, Brenda, Alan's wife, sat on my left in the front row, holding my hand. Elise was on my right holding my other hand. God, how I love my children and appreciated the love that Glenda had instilled in them for family. The minister was kind and encouraging, delivering an inspirational message of hope and deliverance. The music consisted of 3 numbers that were close to Glenda's heart. Bob finally took the stage. Brenda and Elise tightly squeezed my hands, reassuring me that they were in this with me to help me get through this. Bob said he'd been asked by Glenda to read a letter she had written. She must have given it to him the last time that they had visited her when Elise was there. The letter was one of encouragement to all, advising everyone to take full advantage of the time we have as if it was our last. Without specifically referencing what she had done with Bob, she encouraged everyone to forgive one another, as it was the kind thing to do. Lastly, she encouraged everyone to stay in contact with me and the children, and to try to arrange for me to meet quality women to continue living a full and fruitful life. Everyone, including me, laughed at that. That was just like Glenda. When he had finished, Bob decided to include an invective. I've known Hank here longer than anyone else in this room. From the grave, his dear departed wife has implored us all to forgive one another. I stand before you all, confessing that I did something that might be considered wrong for all the right reasons. Hank here refuses to forgive me. We've been best friends since junior high school, yet he can't find it in his heart to forgive me this one infraction. As Bob continued speaking, Alan stood up and gave the kill signal to the minister, who nodded his head. The microphone Bob was using was immediately turned off. Brenda rose to her husband's side as Elise and Edward all stood up, pulling me up with them. Alan then walked the 5 of us out of the main chapel to the vestibule. As we began leaving, Teresa, Charlene, Joe and Evelyn also stood up in protest and walked out with us. Bob was flabbergasted to see his own family abandon him as he was speaking. Alan explained, Charlene told me that she overheard her daddy mentioning that he might call you out from the stage. I had already arranged a signal with the minister to cut his mic if he did. I spoke to him firmly when he arrived not to say anything inappropriate, and he swore that he only wanted to say what Mom wanted him to say on her behalf. I didn't expect his family to walk out with us. I looked at Charlene, who said, I love my dad, and I love all of you as well. What he was saying in there, well, it just wasn't right. We know the story, Uncle Hank. We know what they did was wrong, and we stand with you today. Your family too. I'm sorry that we have been estranged since that weekend. I love you all, even more now than before. You show me your true colors and I like what I see. But you, Teresa. Hank, I'm sorry for my part in all this. All I can do is offer my deepest apology along with my condolences. What my husband did in there is wrong, and I do not support him in attacking you publicly as he just did. I'm embarrassed beyond measure. Please don't let his waywardness eat away at your happiness. You have such a wonderful family to support you. Take joy in them, she urged. Teresa, a wise person once told me, you can be bitter or better, but you can't be both. Teresa hugged me and clung to me as if her life depended on it. Yet she was still married to my nemesis, and she had made the egregious mistake of supporting his and Glenda's weekend tryst. I had no idea if I could ever overcome that. Moments later, the doors opened and the crowd began exiting the chapel. Everyone who passed by us again offered their sincere condolences. I asked the kids, including Charlene, Joe and Evelyn, to take all of the flowers that had been supplied for the service. They promised me that they would take care of it and thanked me. As I moved to make my way back home, Charlene asked if I minded if she accompanied me. Alan and Elise nodded in approval as she took my hand and led me to my car. She drove us to my home where she prepared me a wonderful meal from all the many dishes that friends had dropped off for us. She cleaned the kitchen immaculately and kept me company until supper time. As my kids showed up, Charlene again gave me a big hug, told me she loved me, and begged me not to become a stranger. Charlene was a good person and had been raised well. Over the next couple of weeks, Bob made several attempts at reconciliation. I rebuffed his every gesture. His kids joined mine twice over the summer at their various homes, inviting me to a family barbecue. No mention of Bob or Teresa was ever made. Things dropped off sharply after that as contact became less frequent. Everyone has their lives to live and I felt no sorrow over it. I delved deeply into my job, focusing my efforts on efficiently procuring all necessary parts and components needed in a timely manner and at a reasonable cost. I had a staff of 7, 3 of who were recent hires. I led this core group and was proud of how smoothly our operations were going. Everyone pulled their weight and I considered them my work family. It had been slightly over a year since Glenda's passing when I received a cryptic text from Alan, asking me to meet him at a fancy restaurant called Cher Berto's Saturday night at 8, his treat. He indicated that he was working on a special project, and he wanted his contact to meet me there. He asked that I dress nicely in a suit. I wondered what kind of special project he was getting involved in. Was he thinking of making a career change? I was pleased that he wanted to include me in this aspect of his life. I took my best suit to the cleaners to be ready to meet this businessman. Cher Berto's is an upscale restaurant that powerful businessmen or couples typically visit for special occasions. It is quite expensive, but has an impeccable reputation for producing the most exquisite aperitifs and dishes. I had never been to Cher Berto's restaurant before tonight. Alan had instructed me to give my name to the concierge upon my arrival. He quickly acknowledged the reservation and asked me to follow the maitre d' to my table. As we walked through the venue, I could sense the romance in the air, as dashing couples exchanged looks of love and adoration. There were also a few tables filled with businessmen, to which I assumed I was headed. As we made our approach, I noticed a woman from behind, dressed in all her finery, seated alone at a table. She had a very classy appearance from my perspective, and I thought some man was very lucky. When I thought we were about to pass her table by, the maitre d' stopped and motioned for me to take my seat. "There must be some mistake, sir," I suggested. "Miss Non, there is no mistake, sir, I assure you. May I help you with your chair?" he offered. I pulled the chair out opposite the lady I had earlier eyed and took my seat. She appeared to be just as stunned as was I. "Hello, Teresa." "Hank, what are you doing here?" she asked in earnest. "I'm guessing the same reason as you. Let me guess, did Alan invite you here tonight?" "No, Charlene. I was to meet her here at 8. "Ah, and I was to meet Alan here at 8. I smell a rat." Right at that moment, both of our cell phones buzzed announcing incoming texts. We both read our respective messages. "Let me guess, Charlene is unavoidably detained and won't be able to make it tonight." "How did you?" "Oh, I see. Yes, we've been set up. It appears as though we've both been duped by our children." The maitre d' stood by patiently as if he was waiting for something. "Teresa, since we're already here, would you like to go ahead and order something instead of wasting the night?" "No sense leaving now," she agreed. "We might as well go ahead and order. I've heard good things about this place." "Me too, sir." I looked at the maitre d'. "Oui, monsieur. Could we have 2 menus, sir?" "Oh, that wouldn't be necessary, sir," as he clapped his hands twice to garner attention. Within moments, 3 of the waitstaff appeared from the kitchen bearing 3 full trays. Without making a single inquiry, they unloaded deliciously smelling dishes before us, as if they already knew what dish went where. Then they left as quickly as they had appeared. We were both stunned a second time. "How? When? But these are all my favorite dishes," Teresa exclaimed. "Mine too. It's almost as if someone who knew us both well pre-ordered for us, isn't it?" "Those scoundrels," she echoed. "I must say, if I'm going to be surprised, I can certainly think of worse things to be surprised with." "You're right about that," I said, acknowledging the double entente that she had not intended. "I can guess why they set us up," she offered. "They knew you'd never contact me. You made it pretty clear how you felt about us when everything went down, and right now, as I think back on it all, I can't say that I blame you, Hank. Actually, I don't mind it so much since it's just you. But if he had been here with you, then I would have never sat down," I clarified. "He? You mean Bob? Are you saying you don't know?" the astonished woman asked. "No, what? Has something happened to him? I haven't talked to him since before Glenda passed. And the kids know better than to bring him up to me." "I see. Well, that explains it then. There's a lot of water that has gone under the bridge. Do you want to hear the story?" "Teresa, my evening's open. I have nothing else planned tonight. You've piqued my curiosity." "Very well, but I must warn you in advance that you might hear his name many times as I tell my story. It's been a little over a year now. I think I can handle it without blowing up. Go ahead, Teresa." About 3 weeks after Glenda's memorial service, Bob said he felt that something wasn't alright in Manland, so he went to see his regular doctor, who sent him to a specialist. He was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer. The only recommended treatment was a prostatectomy, the complete removal of his prostate gland. It was a radical surgery. The cancer was so far advanced that they had to make sure that not a single trace was left behind. During the invasive process, they severed numerous blood vessels as well as many nerves. After his rehabilitation, he realized that the surgery rendered him impotent. The severed blood vessels meant that there was insufficient blood for him to achieve an erection. On top of that, the severed nerves left him with no sensation to aid in his arousal. Bob was left unable to. This was shocking news to me. I hadn't heard about any of this. The kids had done a great job of protecting me from any new information about his status. She noticed the expression of surprise on my face and continued. I hope you will forgive my candor, Hank, but I've been such close friends with you and Glenda that I have no problem sharing personal intimate details with you. I nodded my agreement. After the surgery, he received regular radiation treatments that took its toll on him mentally and emotionally. At first, Bob worked hard at taking care of my needs digitally and orally. I think it helped his mental image of his virility. Eventually, his frustration with his impotence took over, and he soon gave up on trying anything else with me. He told me that I could buy all the toys I wanted to take care of myself. He became severely depressed but refused to participate in counseling therapy. As a result, Bob became belligerent and verbally abusive from abusing alcohol. When he lost his job, everything changed from bad to worse. He started hating me. I refused to remain a victim. 3 strikes and he was out. My divorce from Bob was granted just last week. Hank, I haven't been intimate with a man for the better part of a year. My mind was racing upon hearing everything that they'd been through. Although I would never say the words out loud, I immediately thought them about Bob. Karma is a witch. My thoughts then returned to the vision of beauty seated before me. I didn't know Teresa. Quite frankly, I don't know what to say. I had no idea about his diagnosis nor his mistreatment of you. Thinking back, I feel foolish and petty now, having turned my back on you too. I wish I had been there for you. You don't deserve what happened to you. Any more than you deserve what happened to you, Hank. It looks as if we both got a raw deal. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. We can't change the past, but maybe we can do something about the future. I rose, moved my chair next to hers, leaned over, and gave her a tender kiss. She was as receptive as I was. Right after our kiss ended, we heard a group of people leap to their feet and exclaim, yes, as they pumped their arms fervently in the air. It was then that we noticed all of our kids and their spouses collectively seated at a large table in the far corner of the room, where they could observe us without being discovered. We laughed ourselves silly, until our sides hurt, until we could hardly catch our breath. The sweetness of our kids' gesture, coupled with the love Teresa and I had shared over the years, and the ordeals we had both faced and survived, bonded us together in a unique way, one in which the dark clouds were lifted from both of our lives, and sunshine once again prevailed. We told the kids that they still had to pay the check. The funny thing is that all 5 couples fought furiously for the privilege to pay it. And that's it for today's story, friends. If you enjoyed today's story, leave a like and comment before you leave. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss any video. Goodbye for now and I'll see you in the next video.